Hey guys, welcome to this week's show. I appreciate you taking a couple of minutes. Hey, this particular week we're talking about a drainage solution. A drainage solution for all of you who have flat yards, flat, no slope, nothing to do with gravity drains. It just ain't gonna work, coach. So this week we're gonna throw some power to it and we're gonna figure out exactly how you can have a gravity drain and then evac that water to where you need it to go. Hey, you ready? Glad you're here. Hey, I'm Matt. You can call me Coach. Every Friday I bring to you landscape design concepts, theories, ideas, and solutions in an easy to understand format so you guys can go out and get the results you want, save a boatload of money in the process, be a heck of a lot more self-reliant, and get it done yourself. You know, after 20 years of this green industry that I've been involved in, I've picked up a lot of knowledge and experience that I want to share with you guys, the new, modern, educated, self-reliant homeowner of today. Okay, short story first. Back in 2015, Maestro and I, we purchased a 2.5 acre olive ranch in Northern California. And on this 2.5 acres, we had a dilapidated olive orchard, 2 houses, one brand new and one a little older, and we had some of the utilities that are already in there. Power, well and water, septic, that kind of stuff. But the reason we called it Weed Patch Ranch was exactly that. We had weeds that were sometimes as high as knee or even hip out in the orchard. And that could be a whole nother video in itself. But why do I bring this up? Here's why. Shortly after we moved in, about 2 weeks or so, and we were still living out of boxes and putting stuff away and just basically getting settled, we had a rainstorm. And for Northern California, 2.5 inches of rain all at once in about a 48-hour period is a big deal. Now, I've traveled this country now for quite a spell, and I have seen rain like I have never experienced before in my life. So in this particular case, 2.5 inches set to our property, a whole lot of water that I did not expect. And I found that the low spot in the neighborhood was just to the north of me in the neighbor's yard, but it had to come right through mine. And sure enough, about 3/4 of the way through this rain event, I had a creek. I literally had a creek coming from the orchard next door, running through our yard and running directly under our brand new manufactured home right underneath the foundation, and then making its way out to the neighbor's house, and then making its way eventually to the county culvert where it was captured and removed. But holy crap, you know, the word civil litigation comes to mind. Proper real estate disclosure comes to mind, because I certainly did not get any of that, and I was thinking about the former. I also kind of tried to control my profanity down to a moderate volume and a little bit of it. But after that, I put on my rubber boots and I started getting to work. And I went out there just like I've done at so many other places, and I started flagging this little creek bed, flagging some of the low spots that were of a problem, and getting down on a piece of paper a plan and a materials list that I was going to have to attack this pretty darn soon. So soon after, as soon as we got a little bit of a drying event, I was able to get out there on Kanga and its trencher attachment, and I started in. I did a hybrid system which had a large trench that went along the eastern boundary of the house and down the north side to where I was going to put in a basin. And then I started in with solid corrugated lines that were going to be capturing things off of the house after I put a gutter system in. It did not even have, on a brand new home, did not even have a gutter system. So we got that installed a couple of weeks later, and the rest of it is kind of history. We ended up doing a solid corrugated, a French drain system, and also a sump basin, which is the basic focus of this week's video. And after about 4 intense days of heavy-duty labor, getting the trench, gravels, pipe, fabric, sediment socks, basins, sump pumps, discharge lines, etc., I had what I thought to be the water was under control. And the next rain event, it proved me right, and I was very, very happy with the results. I was so happy with the results, I ended up putting another one in over on the southern side of the property, which captured all water that was going to be collecting from up the hill in my neighborhood. and that one worked out fantastic. Now I didn't have any more problem water. And once I had that, I was able to go in and regrade the lot and be able to do what I wanted to do landscaping wise now that I had the runoff water under control. You know, at the house, the main house that we're talking about, I didn't hardly have any slope or fall there that I could deal with. So I had to create my own. So the beginning of the French drain was about 6 inches deep, including pipe and everything. And then by the time I ran it along the back of the house and down the north side to the basin area, I was able to achieve about 1.5 to 2% pitch. The end of it was probably about 13 to 14 inches deep, and it ran really well. You know, in the basin itself, I set up electrical to code right next to the basin, and then I put in a 1 horsepower little giant pump, and then I had a 2-inch PVC discharge line that ran about 145 feet down towards the county road. And there it discharged into a dry creek bed and basically green drained its way out to the county culvert. It worked out really well, and I was very proud of the project. So why all this storytelling? Well, because I'm talking from experience, not only personal experience, but also professional experience, because this was one of about 15 systems that I installed in the last 5 years of my contracting career. And I really threw some great solutions at some of my clients that were really having problems. There was one particular job that I had where before I got there, they were scrambling and getting sump pumps and discharge hoses and putting them in a sandbag area next to their family room because the same rain event had caused a flooding almost into their home. So we were there weeks later. We ended up putting a very fancy drain system and sump system in, and no more problem. That's where guys like myself, as contractors and landscapers and designers, that is where we get our job satisfaction from. So this week we're really focusing in on power or mechanical drainage solutions. You know, they've been around for a long time. People have been using them in basements of homes for decades and decades to rid themselves of any seepage water that collects down in basements and discharging it out. Well, this is the same principle, only we're putting it out in the landscape itself. We're putting it out so that you can capture water from your home, capture water from catch basins out in low spots of the yard, and then strategically placing a catch basin with an electrical sump pump in there and a discharge line so you can send water where you want it to go, where it needs to go, and not for it just to collect and flood out yards like some of these pictures you see right here. That's just a waste of yard. It's a damage to property and dwellings. You know, we just can't have that kind of standing water sitting around on yards and next to dwellings and next to basements. My gosh, this is how so much water damage claims are done year after year after year. Well, this mechanical sump drainage system can really solve that. The other thing is mechanical sump drainage systems are a great way for those folks who have property that is down low on a piece of property, and the only place that you can discharge water might be up the driveway and onto the county road, something like that. And you can't discharge it into your neighbor's yard because that doesn't make you a good neighbor at all. And you can't discharge it into the local creek because it's environmentally protected. So we can't do that. So these things have the power to capture water and then send it uphill, up a driveway, or out into a field, or wherever you need it to go to keep it away from your property itself. Okay, some key ideas and key components that go along with a sump drainage system. These guys are really, really important. They're concepts first, parts second, okay? So first of all, a strategic place, a good location where you can put that basin and eventually that sump pump. It has to be in a place where you can get power to it reasonably easy, and it also has to be a place where all the other drainage lines can conveniently converge to it. And then you bring those drainage lines into that basin, and then that discharge line goes out. So strategic placement, number one. Second, a good, reliable, emphasis on reliable, electric sump pump. Ones that I've used over the years have been Little Giant, number one, Zoller, number two, And then if I was in a pinch or I didn't have any other choice, I might go to the box stores like Home Depot, and I've used the Rigid brand. Stay away from the Everbuilt brand. Never had good luck with those, and I've replaced more than I have installed. Sorry, Everbuilt, the product just doesn't last that long. Another key component is learning how to put in a properly sloped drainage trench so that you have at least a 1% fall for the water that comes off your house, from your catch basins and to your basin. So you start out at the origin being a little shallow and you finish a little deep, and you should have at least a 1 to 2% pitch so water makes its way where it's supposed to go. If you start making it level, or you start making it like a roller coaster, it just will not perform like you want it to. So very, very good way of doing it is when you dig your trench, that you scrape all your tailings off, and then start measuring with a 2x4 across the trench, down to the trench bottom, down to the trench bottom, down to the trench bottom, as you go along, and making sure that you have just a little deeper, little deeper, little deeper. And make sure that trench is nice and clean, nice and flat underneath there. You can even put a small sand layer in if you want to make it just perfect. That's a good professional way. Okay, some key components, some parts. We talked about the pump. We talked about a good quality basin. Now, the ones they sell at the box stores, I've used them and they work perfectly fine, provided that you backfill correctly around them after you dig the hole out. There's other ones that you can get that are higher priced. You can even get some cement ones like you're seeing right here. Now, those are pricey and they also are very heavy, so you have to know what you're capable of. Also consider some properly sized discharge lines. Now, if you know for a fact in your area that you don't get a lot of rain, and your big rain events are few and far between, you'd probably be able to get away with an 1.5-inch discharge line. Personally, when I installed them, they were always 2-inch or maybe 3, but most of the time just 2-inch. And that generally sent out 30 to 40 gallons a minute and did really well. Make sure on your discharge line that you always have a flapper style backflow preventer or a check valve, so that all the water you're sending downstream somewhere or uphill somewhere is not just going to flow back in. Very, very key component. A backflow preventer. Do not use the spring-loaded ones, the PVC ones. Use a flapper one, and they're very easy. You can see a couple of pictures of them right here. They just work. They work much better, and if there's any sediments and stuff that get involved, they tend to handle those sediments a lot better than the spring-loaded one. Now, the actual installation steps is pretty easy. Most of the time you can flag your trench out, or you can paint the trench out to where it needs to go. You can paint where your basin's going to be. You can paint where your electrical is going to be, and then put some effort into it. I always suggest getting a trencher, just because it's working smarter, not harder, but you probably have to finish a little bit with a shovel here and there, and probably get yourself a trenching shovel to put this in. Now, digging the basin itself, basins generally stand about 28 to 32 inches, so that's how deep your hole is going to be. You want to have it recessed below grade about 1.5 inches or so you can decorate around that sump basin with boulders and gravels or a lid of some kind so that you don't have intrusion. Now, the discharge pipes, PVC is the most common, but you can also use the agricultural discharge lines that you can roll out when you need them and then roll them back up and store them when they're not. The basic thing to do is where you daylight out of your basin, you can just ring clamp it with a hose clamp on there and then run it out to wherever you need to discharge, whether that's uphill or out or wherever it needs to go. And then during the dry season, like we used to always have rain end at May and not start up again to sometimes October, November. So we could roll that thing up and put it in the shed for months. Make sure you clean it out at least once during the rainy season and once before you store it. Make sure there's no bugs and debris and leaves that have got caught up in there. Make sure you keep it in good shape. Most of the time, those ag discharge hoses, those are an avoidance for having to cut concrete. And many times where some of our drainage issues and drainage basins get put is right near patios and walkways. And you have to make a decision. Either you're going to roll a hose over it, or you're going to cut the concrete and put a PVC discharge line underneath it, and then you'll be solved. I personally like to put things underneath the ground so they're hidden and you don't have to worry about them. But that's me, you know, but it's pretty easy to cut a 4-foot walkway, you know, about 6-8 inches wide, and then do the work that you have to do, and then put a couple of 2x4 forms on there and stake them in place, get a couple of bags of cement, re-pour it, refinish it, and call it good. It's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of practice. You can practice on a sheet of plywood if you want before you do it. Okay, some key considerations you might want to think about before you get started, and that is make sure that you can discharge the water where you want it to go. Check with your local city or county codes and make sure that you can discharge landscape runoff to those areas. You know, it's one thing for Mother Nature to dump water wherever she wants, but it's another thing for you to dump water into environmentally protected creeks, certainly not into your neighbor's yard, and up to the cityscape, the actual roadway. Now, if you can, make sure, you know, do you have the capabilities of tunneling underneath that public walkway? I've done a few of those, and then across the median, and you can even core out the curbing right there, and you can take that pipe right up to the gutter. That's the perfect way. The other thing is know your skill level. You know, if you're a rook at this, if you're a noob, it's okay. Just learn a little bit more before you go out there on Saturday and start ripping and tearing. You know, me being a retired contractor, I wish I had a lot of job video that I could show you, but instead I'd like to share a couple of channels with you where you could really learn more about drainage, especially sump drain basin installation. Check out these two channels. I'll put them right here. One is Apple Drains. He's a great guy out of Florida, and another one is French Drain Man out of the upper Midwest. Both of them make their living doing nothing but just this, and they've really perfected their art, so check them out. All right, to make the job as easy as possible, remember, knowledge is power. So first of all, if you know me at all, if you've listened to any of my videos, is always to have a plan. First and foremost, have a plan of what you need to do. Describe the problem, describe the solution, and then start in on a materials list. Make that materials list as detailed as you can, and then when you make your run to the store to get your materials, get them all at once. That way you don't do that Home Depot loop or that Lowe's loop or that Ace Hardware loop where you're going, oh, I forgot this, oh, I forgot that, oh, I forgot this. The components are basically, they boil down to about 20 or less. And just going to the store one morning, you can have it all gathered up within an hour. The other thing is start and then complete this system all at one time if you can. You don't know what Mother Nature has in store for you. Now, where I worked, I knew that between June and September, 98% chance I was never going to have any kind of rain. I just knew that for a fact. But where you're at, you might have a week of dry weather and then a week and a half of daily rains. I don't know where you're at. But if that's the case, you have to make sure that you find a window. Generally for a homeowner, I would suggest having at least a 6-day window period where you can get out there without expecting a flood. Do your trenching, do your basin placement, do your electrical, do all your pipe installation, and finish it all off in one fell swoop. That way it makes it so much easier. If you piecemeal it out, chances are it's going to look piecemealed at the end. So jump on it just like a contractor would, start to finish, get it done, put it in, clap your hands. Then you know at night when the heavens open up, that thing is going to work perfectly for you. And make sure you test it before the rains come. Make sure everything is working. Stick a hose at the origin area and let it flow and let it pump, 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 and make sure everything is working well. All right, little disclaimer here in the middle of the video, and that is these systems are for the average residential and small rural properties. These are not meant and not developed for those once-in-a-lifetime storms. They're not meant for 6 inches of rain overnight. They're not meant for a hurricane. They're meant for normal, average rainfall of 1.5 inches or 2 inches or 3 inches maybe. It all depends on the volume. If you know that you're subjected to big rainfalls, upsize your piping, upsize your basin, and upsize your pump and your discharge line to accommodate for these things. when you upsize things like pumps, make sure you have a good electrical system, and you've probably dedicated a circuit just to that pump or pumps, depending on how many systems you're putting in. 20 amp minimum. I would not tie into a house system that has only a 15 amp bedroom circuit, because you may have somebody in there, you know, blow drying their hair and listening to music and charging computers, and then it's raining cats and dogs, and now your 1 horsepower pump needs to kick on. Chances are you're going to blow a breaker. 20 amp. 20 amp is always a good choice. These particular systems are not meant for that 100-year flood. You know, Maestro and I had the unfortunate but coincidental chance of going through Waverly, Tennessee a few weeks ago. Now, you may not be aware of that, but Waverly, Tennessee was a victim of a catastrophic rain event. Catastrophic 100-year flood event. 17 inches of rain inside 24 hours. And it took the little creek that goes through and around the town and took it from something you could jump over into something that was 200 and 300 yards wide. And it moved cars and houses and destroyed property. And it was horrifying to drive through and see where the creek was and where the damage stopped. That's something like that. These sump basins are not going to do it for you. You couldn't have controlled that much water with 20,000 horsepower diesel pumps. There's no way. I mean, take a look at just some of these pictures and imagine the forces behind them. It was scary to drive through, and my heart goes out. Maestro's heart too goes out to those people in Waverly. They'll be rebuilding for years and years to come. So don't think that, hey, I remember a few years ago when we were in Waverly, I'm going to put in one of these sump pumps that Coach showed me. No, this isn't going to work. Hey, a couple of things, a couple little pro tips, something that'll really make your system last a lot longer. Number one, when you make your trench, if you're doing a solid, either solid corrugated type or a solid PVC system that goes to your basin, not as important. But if you're going to do a hybrid system like I did, where you had some solid coming off the house, you had a French drain capturing and diverting water, make sure that in that French drain system, you use the Burrito style of French drain installation. Landscape fabric first, sediment sock on your perforated drain line. Take that wrapped perforated pipe, put it down in the trench on top of your landscape fabric. Gravel, and level. Then take your landscape fabric and put it over the gravel, and then you can bury it or decorate it or however you want to do it after that. But there you have a drain burrito, and you will really eliminate or drastically mitigate any sort of sediment intrusion. And a sediment intrusion into a French drain system and into a basin is the death of it over the long term. So mitigate it as much as possible. You know, many times if you've ever gone to college or professional sporting events that are outdoor events like football and baseball and soccer, there's all kinds of these systems right underneath that artificial or natural turf that's out in those stadiums. It is just all crisscrossed so that soon as that rain starts and stops, that system captures all that water and gets it off the field as soon as possible so the games can begin. And oftentimes there are sump systems that go along, serving to evacuate that water not only off the field, but out of the infield, out of the end zones, and out of the stadium itself. So remember, as I've said so many times, not only in the ebook, but also in the digital course, and on several other videos, remember, French drain systems are for the capture of surface and subsurface water. Solid corrugated systems and PV systems are meant for capture from dwellings and out of catch basins and directing them wherever they need to go. Little difference between the two. Two different types of pipe, two different applications in the drainage world. And lastly, remember to have a plan B at all times. Why do I say that? Well, not everybody lives in a place where the electrical grid is just stellar. You know, there's some places in this country, this continent, and this world where sometimes you've got problems with the electrical grid when a storm comes in. And when you do that is the worst time in the world to have a power outage is when the heavens open up. Because if you've done this beautiful, elaborate drainage system and you've got the best pumps in the world, it don't mean crap if that electrical pump doesn't kick on. So have a plan B. I always suggest having a backup generator, either attached to your home, a nice Kohler or Generac, you can take a couple pictures here, or having a gasoline powered one. Maybe a 4500 inverted one, so you're not keeping your neighbors up with a contractor generator. Use an inverter one like a Honda or Yamaha or maybe a Champion. They're much quieter, just as powerful, and they don't keep everybody awake. That way, if for some reason the power goes out, you can go out there, plug it in, pull the cord. You just have to be aware that you're going to have to use gasoline or diesel, whatever you might have. So consider that plan B. Well, if you'd like to get just a little bit more education before you go launching on this, check out the website, youryardcoach.com. Maestro always puts it in down here or up there. There you can find just a couple of products that help keep this channel and us going. And there you'll find the ebook, Landscaping Simplified, and also the Homescape 1.0 digital course, both really reasonably priced. Don't forget about the 15-step DIY checklist. That is all I have for you this week, guys. A good, solid drainage solution. And for those of you who are coming up on the wet season, now's the time to get it in and get it done. And then when the heavens do open up, you can sit back and not have to worry about yards that look like this when you wake up in the morning. Hey, I'll catch you guys next week, every Friday, all right? And as always, to your landscape success. Take care.